Okay, so I'm cheating here a little bit because I could run 1,000,000 trials here, and this is the curve you were drawing, and you can see how it gets very, very low.
Yep.
But maybe I could see, this is after 1,000,000 trials. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Max averages, sorry. The maximum bucket has 107,000 in it, so that must be right around 5 or 6. 73 was the most. So we ran 1,000,000 trials, and the most we ever saw was 73.
All right.
Tries. So instead, so what I did is I looked at was comparing running 100 trials to the 1,000,000 trials.
All right.
Okay. So the first thing I have are some histograms of the maximum value that we saw running 100 trials. So I ran 100 trials 1,000 times, and I got this distribution of the maximum number of times.
Okay.
So what does that tell you?
Well, the expected maximum of your run is somewhere probably above 30. I mean, the highest column looks like it's between 25 and 30, looks like. And then you're not gonna see very many above 50.
Okay, so now when we did it yesterday with one run at 100, we saw 34. Is that surprising?
No, so it looks like the max is between 25 and 35.
Okay, so we kind of expect, hey, if we do 100 runs, maybe we'll see something that takes 34 times. And then I did 200 runs. So I did 1,000 runs of 200 trials, and then my maximums look like this. So tell me two things. Like, what do you notice about this distribution compared to the other distribution?
So it looks slightly higher. I mean, it looks now like it's between 30 and 35. And 25 is a bit lower. And then you're also not going as high here. Like, we saw this 160 up here, but we only go to 55 here.
Okay, is that surprising?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you think with more runs, you'd get a higher maximum.
Okay.
But, I mean, overall, it's a little bit higher, but we didn't see as high numbers.
Okay. So do you expect it to be higher when I do 200? Do you expect the maximum number of trials to be higher?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not by too much, but just a little bit.
All right, and this one was 1,000, by the way. So this last one I did 1,000.
Well, let's see. Now there are no. Before, for the 100, there were actually quite a lot that were around. The maximums were around 25, but here there's none. The lowest is 30, and there are very few. Like, just at 30, and now it's sort of shifted. Maybe like 35 to 45 would be the expected maximum.
Okay. What do you say? What do you see here different compared to the 100 or the 200?
Yeah, the maximum is much higher. There's nothing below 30, and it's a little higher than the 200 to the 100.
Okay. So here's the next set of things I did is I just counted the number of things in the 1,000,000 run that were above our maximum. So for this run, we had something like 30,000 of the 1,000,000 were above our maximum, and this one like 22,000 of the 1,000,000.
What's the maximum? Is that?
So I did a run of 100. So I did 100 rolls to see how often it would take, and I found the maximum one. So like for example, 34.
Okay.
And then in our run of 1,000,000, if I found 34 was the maximum, maybe there were 15,000 runs in our 1,000,000 that were above 34.
Okay.
And sometimes when I got a high number, maybe I got like 50 was the maximum, then hardly any were above it. Maybe only 2,000 out of the 1,000,000 were above it.
Yeah.
But here's the distribution I got above it when I did 100 runs. Okay. Here's how many I got above it when I did 200 runs. So I rolled 200 times. So what do you notice that's different between this graph showing the number above and this graph showing the number above?
So this one has much lower numbers. So this goes up to about half of what's up here.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. And here's with 1,000 trials and picking the maximum and then finding how many in our million were above it.
So
So
this
now
is
the maximum is about 3,000.
about 1/10 of what we originally saw.
Yeah. Interesting observation. In fact, I'm going to skip the next part and show you the calculations. They're up here. Just run it. Okay, so on average, when I did 100 runs, I found 8,420 was about the number on average, how many were above my
Your
maximum.
maximum. Oh. Okay.
When I did 200 runs, on average, it was only about 4,400 that were above. And when I did 1,000 runs, it was only 863 on average that were above it in the million. So what do you notice about the relationship between 8,400, 4,400, and 863?
So they're decreasing kind of at about the amount that you go up. So, like you start with 100, you get a number, and then you double your starting number. This decreases by a factor of 2. You multiply your starting number by 10, it decreases
it's
by a
okay.
factor of 10.
Just about.
So on.
Yeah, so here I decreased by a factor of roughly 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then here I decreased by a factor of roughly 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can use this kind of information to get a sense on really nice distributions. Some information about what might be beyond you.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is, the same formula here, I don't know if it'll show up or not, but it says it's 1 over n plus 1, or roughly 1 over n, and which is what we were seeing,
Yeah.
this sort of decay of, if I did double the number of runs, the amount above it was roughly half. If I did 10 times the number of runs, the amount above it was roughly divided by 10. And that's because when that is true, what Nassim showed, that's true when you have a very nice distribution. But now we're going to look at a distribution that's super complicated.
Okay.
Okay.